You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by.
Good morning. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation for Wednesday, March 15th, 2023. I'd like to note for the record, this meeting is being webcast. We welcome public comment on today's agenda. I will note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on the agenda item by submitting their written comment by 9 a.m. today. I'd like to state for the record that no comments were received from the public for today's agenda. I will also note that we do not have any members of the public attending today's meeting, which I think we have some people, right? Yeah. This gentleman's from Drew. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. And before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any agenda item. If so, I would ask that you please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. Hearing none, we can move on and go to the first item on the agenda, which is I'll call upon Steve to present a request for authorization of the corporation to adopt its operating capital budget for fiscal year 2023-24. Steve.
Right. Thank you, Robert. Good morning, everybody. Obviously, each year we come before April 1st to bring you and adopt an annual operating and capital budget. This year's operating budget proposes a total of a little bit over nearly, I should say, 1.2 million in personnel services, in addition to 255,000 in non-personnel services for a total of $1.435 million. And that obviously is staffing and office-related stuff. On the capital side, we're looking to adopt a capital budget of $64,533,840. And this is really to go towards some of the projects at Canal side, our Gateway building, Sinatra project, as well as on the Outer Harbor. Obviously, we're in the middle of the Terminal B project. We started the Bell Slip project, and we'll look forward to getting going at Wilkinson Point. Renovations later this year as well. So, there's no issues from a seeker standpoint. It's a type 2 action, so no further environmental review is required. Based upon that information, directors are requested to ratify and approve the corporation's proposed 2023-24 operating budget in the amount of $1,435,557 and our capital budget in the amount of $64,533,840.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from any directors? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Steve, item 3, which is the authorization to enter into a contract for emergency maintenance and restoration services and to take related action.
Okay, thanks again. Sure everyone remembers Winter Storm Elliott from late there in December, as many of us switched our Christmas plans. But we had some pretty significant damage on the outer harbor along the shoreline. We lost a bunch of riprap, damage to pathways, fenceways, and in fact, we've actually had to close some sections of public access for safety reasons, and currently they do remain closed to the public. So we reached out. We have Leroy Engineers as our environmental consultant under contract. We reached out to them for an engineer's estimate for fixes. We also reached out to NW Contracting. They have done a number of projects for us on the outer harbor, including repairs over the last few years. We did independent cost estimates, and NW's actually matched up pretty nicely with Lyros. So we actually moved to bring them on board. We did request a contract reporter exemption. Again, using the emergency circumstances and the fact that we're knowledgeable with them, that was approved by ESD. So we would like to bring NW Contracting on. They'll be responsible for equipment, staffing, all the materials necessary really to clear up the site so it's accessible, as well as restore a number of places. Green Belt Trail in and around the Bell Slip, and even at Wilkeson Point and the Bike Paradise. We'd like to enter a contract with them for $502,204, along with a contingency of $100,440. So really for a total of $602,644. We'd be using NIPA's relicensing agreement funds for this. NW Contracting is a certified New York State women-owned business enterprise, but they have also identified Iroquois Bar, an MBE, as well as DV Enterprises, an SDVOB, so that we can continue to hit the 30% participation goal for MWBE and our 6% goal for SDVOB. ESD has determined that the action, which involves entering into a contract for seasonal storm-related maintenance and restoration activities that are necessary for the protection and continuation of our recreational and related facilities, constitutes a Type 2 action defined by seeker, so no further environmental review is required. The directors are requested to make a determination of responsibility with respect to the proposed contractor, authorize the corporation to enter into a contract with NW Contracting for $602,644 and to take all related actions. Based on the foregoing, I recommend approval of the requested actions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions from any directors?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman, the waterfront damage was severe from this storm. I could speak from my experience in my own site at the lighthouse. So a lot of erosion, a lot of torn up pathways. Times Beach got hit very, very hard, and our facilities as well. So it seems prudent to do that, but I just like to request, and I don't think it's only a request I need to make, that we need to consider this in our long range planning as well, because we've had 3 once-a-century storms in the last 4 years, and the trend is troubling. So we may have to consider better armoring of our shoreline and our facilities in the future. This contract is prudent and I think absolutely needed. Right.
Connie?
I have a comment that dovetails on Mike's comments. I think it's important that we carefully document the damage that has been done by the storm so that we can use that going forward as part of our design process.
That's a great point. And to address both, we are working as a stakeholder on a larger coastal resiliency study with the city of Buffalo that has been funded by the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. We are really looking at the shoreline all the way from the Buffalo Harbor State Park on the Outer Harbor, all the way up through Centennial Park. Waterkeeper is also involved in that. So we're trying to look at damage holistically, right? I think we're all experiencing that throughout our different sections of the waterfront. And we hope that that study will be wrapped up later this year. We have actually engaged our design team at Wilkeson Point. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to move to start that work in the fall. But we are revising plans based on the damage that we've seen from the last few years at Wilkeson, so if we can strengthen areas that seem to be hit on a regular basis. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good comments.
Steve, do we qualify to try and acquire some of this funding from feds in the state?
We, in the case here, we did speak with FEMA specifically for this damage, and we're sort of part of that overall larger process due to the storm. It's the first time that we have actually been a part of that based on the scale of our damage. But if we don't address it at a larger scale,
Well, I understand we have to do it. The issue is sort of that money available for us as well. Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion to approve. Laura,
Second.
Connie, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Here, thank you. Next item, Steve, we have is the consultant services in connection with a market demand study for Great Lakes cruise ship industry services. Mr. Gall.
oh, or Renali.
I'm sorry.
Either way.
Yeah, I'm looking at Mr. Gall over there.
Leave me out.
Leave me out of it.
Steve can do this one if he wants.
No, kidding.
Thank you. Last August, the governor announced, bringing cruise ships to Buffalo. And so we have been tasked to move that project forward. We've been meeting with Visit Buffalo Niagara. We've been meeting the NFTA behind the scenes, as well as the governor's office. And it was just back in December, actually, that we advertised an RFP for this study. We actually received 4 proposals in January, reviewed and scored those, interviewed the top 2 teams, and found that M&N Engineering, which is a multidisciplinary engineering and planning firm located in New York. They have an office in Rochester here. That's the closest office. And their team includes Chang Solutions, which is an MWBE, and Chorus Group, SDVOB. They were found to be the top ranked team. They came in really with a very deep understanding of port facilities, market assessments for different communities as it relates to that. And again, with their team in Rochester, a big part of this, we're really familiar with the Buffalo area. We had a fantastic interview, to be quite honest, and the team really does seem like they know what they're doing and to get this done quickly. The scope of work really focuses on 4 tasks. The first being a more comprehensive understanding of what is going on with the Great Lakes cruise ship industry currently. What would be a strategy for the Buffalo Niagara region to develop a successful cruise ship industry here as part of that larger mix. And then we also want to actually look specifically at needed infrastructure, determining what type of port. There's kind of a difference between a home port where folks are actually coming to Buffalo, flying in, staying a night or 2, getting on that boat, traveling around the Great Lakes, and then coming back to Buffalo before they leave. Those facilities are much more significant than, say, a port of call where a ship is just coming for the day and people are spending maybe half a day to a day in Buffalo. So we're going to look at different scenarios and costs and infrastructure needed for that, as well as at a couple of different locations. So we were talking with NFTA early on. We will look at DLW as a potential site. Obviously, an existing structure that could be rehabilitated there, close to Canal side and downtown Buffalo. We will also look at the potential for a new facility out at the Michigan Pier on the Outer Harbor. So really just trying to get a sense of the difference between rehabilitation versus new development, inner harbor, outer harbor. That's the overall scope. We'd like to contract with them for an amount of $173,910 plus a contingency of $43,477 for a total contract not to exceed $217,387. We would use NIPA relicensing agreement money again for this. And of course, the ESD's non-discrimination and contractor supplier diversity policy will apply to this project with the MWBE participation goal of 30% and SBVOB goal of 6%. Staff is determined that the action, which involves entering into a contract for the purposes of engaging a design consultant team to undertake assessment, planning, detailed architectural design and engineering of the project without committing the agency to undertake any future project, constitutes a type 2 action defined by seeker, and no further environmental review is required at this time. So the directors are requested to make a determination of responsibility with respect to the proposed consultant, authorize the corporation to enter into a contract with M&N Engineering DPC for an amount not to exceed $173,910 plus a contingency of $43,477 for a total contract amount of $217,387 and to take all related actions. Based on the foregoing, I recommend approval of requested actions.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Any questions?
Chairman, I have a comment.
Any comments?
Under the scope of work, Steve, task 1, establish a comprehensive understanding of the current state and future prospects. I really want to make sure that they address the environmental implications very thoroughly and very carefully. And I know comprehensive covers a lot, but the other thing that I think needs to be part of comprehensive is how this type of development will affect the scale of everything that is around it. Because cruise ships really change the scale of how things look and feel and work.
Understood. We will definitely include taking a look at the environmental implications and the scale. And I think that, you know, as we talked just briefly about the potential for new construction, which you can hear, obviously, any new construction out there, we want it to fit into the rest of the plan as closely as possible. So we will look at all that.
Anyone else?
Steve, what was how were the scenarios selected? Was there a process of looking at other parts of the waterfront as well before we settled on these two?
I think what we were trying to do early on, and again, I know in task 3, it specifically says home port. I talked about protocol. I think, you know, as we understood better going through the process, it's trying to understand the two types of facilities you could have, and then look at an inner harbor and outer harbor existing versus new construction. If you think there's another location that we should possibly study, let us know.
Well, you know, Terminal A came to mind, but that's obviously private development. Maybe if they could just take a look at that because it was originally constructed as a terminal, just as a thought.
Yeah,
I mean, the DL&W terminal really isn't in our footprint. If we need to be the lead agency on it, so be it. The Michigan Pier is, and so is Terminal A. They're part of our portfolio.
Yeah.
So that, I think, to me, makes it reasonable for us to do at least the study part of this. Obviously, if it's DL&W terminal, not our ballgame after that.
True. No, that's absolutely true. And we do expect the Terminal A private development proposals in the end of this month. And certainly assess whether anybody has proposed that idea too. Okay, just between you.
Anything else?
I'll just say I'm fascinated by this idea. I think most people are. And I will just double down on Connie's suggestion about the environmental impacts of this. I think not doing that would be foolish, especially in light of the last thing we just passed. So, and we know that the Great Lakes are a crown jewel in this country for fresh water, and we know that climate continues to change. So I think the environmental impacts are really important, but so it's also a balancing act with tourism and continuing to ignite our economy. So I'm fascinated to see what the study returns and what the outcomes are.
I agree.
A few months. Yes.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion. Who?
Second,
Seconded. Favor?
I
Opposed? Carried. The next item is for the enter into a contract for design and fabrication services in connection with the Erie Canal bicentennial celebration at Canal site. Steve.
Yes. So the last item here, as I've mentioned a couple of times, Mike and the Canal side advisory group really have been working diligently over the last year or more at this point on making sure that we have an Erie Canal bicentennial commemoration at Canal side in Buffalo. And last year we brought in a consultant to work with the group. We were able to come up with both a vision and sort of mission for a summer-long celebration that included actually experience briefs, much more detail on what some of the stories and story arcs, if you will, that we wanted to tell here in Buffalo. We took that information and distilled it into what we hope will be some keynote experiences, one in the Long Shed, one which would be an indoor multimedia type experience, an outdoor experience within the ruins that are down there at the commercial slip. And then the third would be an evening lake show up on the main canal where we do the ice skating and skating, obviously watered in the summer. So we went out with an RFP in November, actually, a contract reporter. We received 7 proposals from really high quality firms from throughout the United States and Canada. We had interest actually from firms in England as well. So the Erie Canal name does resonate out there. We know this is going to be a big event for us. We went through the whole process. We scoring and interviewing. We landed on Local Projects as our top ranked team. They're a New York State design firm with an office in New York City. Their team also includes Hadley Exhibits here located in Buffalo, and a number of you know them from other work. And then a strong team, Tillotson Design Lighting, which is WBE, Zenith Systems, Biactive Driveway, which is MBE, and Loyal Gas Power is another New York State team. They have done an amazing amount of work. They've actually did the 9/11 memorial. Debbie was there just recently. We talked about that. But they've done some work. I think Mike visited a museum in Washington that they did on storytelling. So they really top-notch firm, world-class design. We're excited about that. Scope of work, obviously they're going to come in based on the concepts we're looking for, but they're going to take that through their own concept development, design phase, which would be our task 1 and 2. And then ultimately for fabrication, installation of these exhibits, as well as maintaining them during the bicentennial period and possibly beyond. So we have a contract amount with local projects, again, just to complete task 1 and 2 at this point, which is the design phase. And then given that this project is set up in phases and the possibility that the work we do in the first phase or 2 could have some adjustments, we actually wrote the RFP to come back to amend the contract when we have fabrication and renovation costs. And we would be using New York Power Authority. This time we'll use the industrial incentive funds at Canal side. The non-discrimination and contractor supplier diversity policy also applies to this project with goals of 30% on WBE, 6% SDVOB. And I'd mentioned some of those companies before. I did not mention Trophy Point, who would be on the team as the SPV. ESD staff has determined that this action, which involves entering into a contract for design and implementation of seasonal, interpretive, and educational features within the existing long shed building and the surrounding existing ruins display area for the main canals, constitutes a type 2 action and no further environmental review is required. The directors are requested to make a determination of responsibility with respect to the proposed consultant, authorize the corporation to enter into a contract for the projects for an amount not to exceed $920,000 with a $92,000 contingency for a total contract amount of $1,012,000 and to take all related action. Based on the foregoing, I recommend approval of the actions, requested actions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions, comments, observations?
Just a comment. I think I probably should speak to this one. And I'd urge the fellow directors to help us get this launched and up and running. The bicentennial planning project actually started before the pandemic and took a hit from that for a while, but we're up and running. There are more than 30 proposed projects we're considering. About half of them are in progress right now. A lot of different areas, a lot of different meetings. I have another meeting directly after this one on bicentennial stuff. This is the keynote experience. This and the construction of the Seneca Chief replica canal boat are really the two main pillars of the bicentennial. And this part is exciting because it's basically about storytelling. And that's what the bicentennial has to be about, is storytelling. This is really the story of Buffalo. This is what got us started. It was critically important, not just to Buffalo, but to the state of New York. It made the state into the Empire State. It made New York City the premier seaport on the Atlantic seaboard, which it hadn't been up until the opening of the canal. And it's important to the nation and the world. So the bicentennial is something we can't let slide by with just a small celebration. It is our story, our origin story, and definitely well worth celebrating, commemorating. There are dark sides of it too, and we're not going to shy away from that. We will be telling a lot of different stories in a lot of different venues, most of them on site, but not all of them. And I'm looking forward to 2025 as a rather busy year for all of us. And I'd urge adoption of this storytelling contract. Great.
Shatora?
A couple of things. I'm glad that you brought up that there's many stories to tell. I hope that these contractors are taking into consideration an inclusive and integrated storytelling, and so that we're catching the perspectives of everyone in the region. I understand the scope of work is what it is. Since this is, I think this is a great thing to do, first of all. My only question is, after all of this work is done, who's doing the marketing so that we can attract as many people to this as possible? Has that been considered?
Yes, we did do a marketing plan, development and branding with Telesco. And I had a packet of it with us on Monday. I forgot to bring it today, but I could show you. If you want, I could email you some of the branding on that. It's still in development stage. We do have taglines and marketing logos and things like that going, and it will be diverse. It will be inclusive. One of the pillars of the story is immigration. So we can tell that not only in the context of the immigration that was, but the importance of immigration to the development of the United States as well. There is a Black history component that needs to be addressed. There's a Native American history component that needs to be addressed. Local projects, the contract we're doing now is just coming off doing something on the Tulsa Massacre, the story of that. So they're totally aware, and we've talked to them. We had some back and forth during the development of the branding, make sure that was inclusive as well.
Okay,
So
but as far as the marketing, who owns that? I guess is the question.
I believe we do.
Yeah, it would be wrapped up in our next public space management contract. But as Mike mentioned, we're trying to brand this somewhat independently than the larger Buffalo waterfront brand. That is so specific to that summer. We've also had some initial conversations with I Love New York as well, you know, about making sure that the message of this commemoration is out there. So we, as Mike said, we will own it, but we've got a plan to get started on it for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Anything else? Connie?
Just one comment. I think we are so lucky to have Mike Bobo be part of this. Because listen, we're sitting here right now. He is the storyteller of storytellers. And you know that this is going to be a great success because you have really hit on it. This is what it is. This is our story. And thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Right person at the right time.
Yep.
Absolutely. No pressure.
We'll make sure of that. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Nothing else? I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'm happy to move.
Seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Items carried. Well, that concludes the meeting and the agenda is now finished. Thank you for attending and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good, how it going?